you all are the experts in here on gardening. You all are the experts on horticulture. You may or may not be super familiar with Kentucky's native plants. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. This is a very broad subject. Of course, we've got millions of plant species in the state. I'm going to cover just a few, kind of do an overview of the importance of native plants for plants, for animals, and for us. And then I'm going to give you all some resources at the end that will help you with your native plant gardening. And if someone can't hear me or the microphone gets weird, just let me know. All right, so of course we need to start out by defining what even is a native plant. When we're talking about native plants, we're talking about a plant that is originally from that area. Now, in the United States, we typically use the timeline of it was here pre-European settlement. Now, of course, there were Native Americans in Kentucky moving plants around before that, but that's just typically the timeline we use. And when we're saying something is native, it's best to follow it with native to somewhere. So all of these plants are native to Kentucky, all of the plants I'm going to be talking about today. Some of them have bigger ranges. They might be native to the southeastern United States. They might be native to the Midwest. But all of them that we're talking about today are native to Kentucky. The second part is that it has its niche. And if you're not familiar with that word, it just means its role. All of you all have your roles in your ecosystems, your parents, your teachers, your employees. You all have your niche, and so do native plants. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so there are native plants to Kentucky, but Kentucky is divided into ecoregions. Has anyone ever heard the word ecoregion? So if you split it up, I'm glad a lot of you have heard of it already, but for those of you who haven't, if you split the word ecoregion up, it's an ecosystem in the region. It's a region with an ecosystem. And typically people divide Kentucky into 5 ecoregions, and what it means is just in that area, the ecosystem is typically this way. The plants are typically this way, the animals are this way, the hardiness zones are this way. And of course, it can be divided even further than 5. So we are in the Jackson Purchase region. Some people also say we're in the Mississippian embayment region, just how you're dividing it up. But when we're talking about native plants, there are some plants that are native to the entire state, and there are some plants that are native to specific regions. So one that we've got native to western Kentucky is the bald cypress tree. You're going to see it in other parts of the state sometimes, but typically it's been planted there. But it is native to the Jackson Purchase Mississippian Plateau region. Short's goldenrod is native to the inner bluegrass region. So again, some of them are native to the whole state, some of them are native to specific regions. This is important because you're going to have plants grow better in your garden if they're from this ecoregion versus the Appalachian Plateau. And here is what Kentucky's land cover types. We saw the ecoregions, and here's the ecosystems on this map. So the dark green is forest. Over half of Kentucky is covered in forest. Of course, we've got a lot of urbanized areas and croplands now. We do still have some wetlands and some prairies. So this is what Kentucky's looks like, just to kind of help you get an idea in your head of what plants are native to that region and why. Here's the different ecosystems. This is what Kentucky looked like 200 years ago. So this is even better to visualize why a plant might be native to a certain area. You can see, again, half of Kentucky is forested. That's pretty much the same. There was a lot more prairie, and there was a lot more wetland. The reason that there's less of it, of course, is because there's building populations, but also a lack of disturbance like fires and big mammals running through. So in this area, it was historically oak hickory savanna, which you can still see in a lot of parts, especially when people are doing prescribed fire here. But that just means there's big oak trees and hickory trees, and there was big mammals running through them, so there wasn't a lot of understory. Up in northern Kentucky, you've got more like Maple Beach as you kind of get more north. But that all goes to say there's different ecosystem types, but most of Kentucky was forested. We have a lot of prairie that we're lacking too, and it's good to plant prairie species because we can kind of bring some of that back. All right, so That's what a native plant is. It's native to Kentucky. It might be native to a certain ecoregion as well. So next up, we're going to talk about the niche, the role of native plants. And would any of you in here consider yourself a people person? I would. I'm an extension professional. I'm sure Mary and Savannah would as well. They're a people person. We're going to talk about some plants. Native plants are plants, right? What I mean, I want to do a disclaimer. This is a horticulture program. Most of you are gardeners. You work with a lot of non-native plants, right? And there is nothing wrong with non-native plants. So this is your little disclaimer. This presentation is about native plants, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. I am not saying that non-native plants are bad. In fact, we use them in our gardening. I ate some corn on the cob earlier. That is a non-native plant to Kentucky. A lot of our crops are non-native. A lot of our garden species are non-native. That's totally fine. They have their purpose. They have their beauty. They add beauty to our lives. That's all great. Now, I told you I was going to talk about invasive species. I can't get through a presentation without it. There are non-native plants that are causing harm, and non-native plants that are causing harm, for those of you who were here last year, are called invasive species. So this is English ivy. This was taken in a hiking area near Bardstown. It is an invasive plant, and you all can see why. It completely overtakes the area, and while some plants, of course, are people person plants, they're plant plants, invasive species are the opposite. They're kind of the bullies of the plant world. They are taking over. They are pushing other plants out of their niche. So those are the non-native plants that are causing harm for different reasons. If you want more info on that, ask me later. But that's kind of just a little disclaimer that's saying not all native plants are bad. In fact, non-native plants are bad. In fact, a lot of them are good. There are some bad ones, but just didn't want to make it seem like I was against non-native plants. I love tulips. Back to native plants though. This is what a prairie would look like in bluegrass region. That's where I took it. This was a demonstration plot. You can see it's beautiful. It's got purples and yellows, which scientifically in your eye sees them together, and they always grow together in nature because they use different pollinators. So we've got some yellow coneflowers in bee balm. I forgot to say this. I'm just 2 slides in. With your bingo card, I'm going to try and remember to say the plant species that are on the screen. If you see them, mark them off on your bingo card, and then obviously shout bingo when you get a full row. If I forget. So we've got yellow coneflowers, and we've got bee balm or wild bergamot. We've got some other ones in there as well, but those are 2 of the dominant ones. This is what a native prairie looks like. You all can see it's got a lot of diversity, but what I want you to notice about this is how they're growing together. We saw the picture of English ivy, and it's the only thing there, right? Here's the native prairie. The plants are working together. So why do native plants work so well together, and why do we need to focus on planting them? Well, like I said, they've been in the region for a long time. So these plants have been growing together and working together for thousands of years or more, so they know how to interact. Sort of like me and I've got 5 siblings, so we know how to interact with each other. We know how to compete. We know how to get what we need, but we know how to grow together. When you meet someone for the first time, maybe you've got a coworker that you don't know how to grow with and compete with naturally. But native plants, they've been growing together for a long time, so they know how to grow together. Because of that, they are their community. You each have your roles in your community, that you all work together to build your community up. That's how native plants work as well. So although there's a bunch of them growing in the same spot, they are working together for a common goal, which is keeping the ecosystem balanced. Along with that, they keep the ecosystem balanced. So native plants are important to have for other native plants, right? And of course, you all don't need me to tell you this, but they are then important for animals, for wildlife. Has anyone in here read Braiding Sweetgrass? If you need a new book to read this year for your New Year's resolution goals, that's a good one. But Braiding Sweetgrass. So Robin Hallhammer, she is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. She is a horticulture professor. I can't remember where, but this is one of my favorite quotes from her. The breath of plants gives life to animals, and the breath of animals gives life to plants. So working together with other native animals. As I'm going through the next few slides, I'm going to have you all each take one of these. You're either going to get a plant or an animal. Take one and pass it to the person next to you. So each person gets one. I should have enough for everyone, but if not, buddy up with the person next to you who has one. So again, we all learned this in elementary school, but native plants provide food and they provide shelter for native wildlife and insects, all of the animals in the ecosystem. We couldn't even have an ecosystem without the native plants because they are harnessing the energy from the sun and they're providing it to the wildlife as well. Non-native plants do not provide the same resources as native plants do. So here's your basic food chain that you all probably had to draw in elementary school. But again, native plants take the energy from the sun. The herbivores eat the native plants. That might be an insect, it might be a small animal, it might be a big animal. And something eats the herbivore, and then something eats something that's eating the herbivore. And then you've got your ecosystem balanced. Has anyone heard the word biodiversity? Probably have before. What I want to talk about with biodiversity is that these are all animals in Kentucky. Without high biodiversity, the ecosystem is imbalanced. So if you're not familiar with the word biodiversity, it just means how many different living things are in the ecosystem. It's important to have high biodiversity with native plants and native animals because it keeps the ecosystem more resilient. For example, we all have heard of chestnut blight wiping out almost to extinction all of the chestnuts in Kentucky and beyond. Now, that is devastating because they have their role in the ecosystem. Now, can you imagine if the chestnut blight also knocked out the oaks and the hickories and all of the other plants? If we had forests made up entirely of chestnut trees, it would have been even worse, right? So it's good that we've got a high biodiversity because while we did take a loss from that, we've got other trees who can kind of fill in that gap. That kind of makes sense. So the high biodiversity of plants, you've got a high biodiversity of animals. Every single animal we see either is using the plant directly, if it's eating it or using it for shelter, or it might be using it indirectly. Regardless, some animal species, especially when we're talking about insects, the kind of second branch of the food chain, the food web, some of them need a specific native plant to survive. Some of them might use a wide range of them, but regardless, all of them are using the native plants. The point has anyone ever been to the Woodlands Nature Station? I'm sure you have. I used to work there, so a lot of my pictures are from there. And if you've been there, you've probably met Shannon, one of the naturalists who's in charge of the gardens as well. Shannon introduced me to bumblebees. Did you know there were different species of bumblebees? I didn't. There are bumblebees that need specific flowers, and there are flowers that need specific bumblebees. I'm going to show you a few examples because I got really excited about it when I learned this. Does anyone know this plant? Yep, it's the purple passion flower. I've got a lot of videos of bees after Shannon introduced this to me. I'll play it again. But you'll notice the passion flower, the anthers where the pollen is, it's really high up from the rest of the flower. So the carpenter bee is the only bee big enough for it to rub its back to pollinate it. So the other bees can go in there and get the nectar, but they want the carpenter bees because it's rubbing its back. And then it goes to the next flower and pollinates it. This one's really fun. So does anyone know this plant? It's a shrub. Close, it's rose turtlehead. So this is rose turtlehead. And the carpenter bees cannot fit in the little flowers. They're kind of like a little sleeping bag. And I say that because the males will actually sleep in there at night. So when you go out in the morning, you'll see a bunch of bumblebee butts just sticking out of the flowers. But the carpenter bees can't fit in there, can they? So the rose turtlehead needs smaller bees, like the eastern bumblebee, to be in there. And the eastern bumblebee needs it to live. I know it's really cute, isn't it? one of my favorites. You can even hear it a little bit. This is shrubby St. John's wort. It's one of my favorites. When you walk outside, when it's in full bloom, it's almost deafening how many bees are on it. And we actually often found an endangered bumblebee, the American bumblebee, on the shrubby St. John's wort. Can you hear him? This is Virgin's Bower, and here's another. I think this is another eastern bumblebee. Excuse me, it's Virgin's Bower.
Oh, bingo!
You got bingo, I've got a prize for you at the end. Wonderful. Does anyone know this plant? Yep, it's partridge pea. So this is another, as you can tell by the name, game birds such as quail eat it. Bumblebees pollinated as well. So I showed you a whole bunch of different bumblebees and their plants that they need, just to show you that even with one group of insects, the bumblebees, look how many different native plants are needed to sustain them. And look how many different bumblebee species are needed to sustain the native plants.
What is that flower again?
This is partridge pea. It's partridge pea. It's really zoomed up close, so it's kind of hard to tell. But it's a low-growing one, and if you need a big area to cover, it's a good one for it. All right, so does everyone have a plant or an animal? Or do you have a friend that has a plant or an animal? If you don't, find someone who has one, and we're going to play plant-animal matchup. So what I want you all to do, we all have either a plant or an animal, and I want you to find your counterpart. So if you have a plant, you need to find the animal that needs you. Now some of these are specific. For example, it might be a butterfly that needs a specific plant for its entire life cycle. Some of them, you might think, oh, this animal can use a bunch of different plants. That's fine too. See if you can find your plants and animal counterpart.
How do you know it?
I'll tell you.
Yes. Who's got milkweed?
We have seen actually, I have no idea what it is.
If you've got a plant, you raise your hand. Do you all want to get up and move around, or would you rather just call out your plants or animals? Call it out. Okay. Go ahead, you want to start?
I have wild grass, wild grasses.
Wild grasses. Do you have an animal that you think would use wild grasses?
Birds.
Sparrows.
Sparrows. Yeah, let's see a rabbit. Deer would eat it.
Does anyone have a sparrow species? It's really tiny font, but I did label all of them.
Oh, it's written on there?
It's written on there. Yep.
What you mean?
Does anyone have a sparrow species?
Huh?
A sparrow?
Oh,
Someone's got to.
Sparrow?
sparrow, the bird sparrow you're talking
I
about.
have a cedar waxwing, but
It's not that one. Who has the sparrow species?
Somebody has a sparrow.
You got it. You got the white-crowned sparrow.
brown sparrow.
There's your match.
Tell me a beer.
All right, who's got the next plant? Sunflower.
Sunflower.
Goldfinch.
Goldfinch. Yeah. Goldfinch.
If you have an animal that you think might use a sunflower, raise your hand. Yes.
What about the papaya and the papaya moth?
Not that one. That's a good guess.
Well, they bore their herbaceous roots, that's all.
Well, there you go.
Cedar waxwing.
Good guess. Not that one either. Thinking of a finchy bird. You've got goldfinch. Goldfinches do use it, but goldfinch is another one. Any other birds? got the next one?
Spice bush.
Spice bush. This one might be pretty easy.
Spice bush.
I have the spice bush swallowtail butterfly.
There you go. That was a pretty easy one, wasn't it? All right, what's the next one?
I have oak.
You have an oak tree.
I have a gray squirrel.
You have a gray squirrel. There you go.
I've got the purple passion flower.
You've got the purple passion flower.
I'm looking for a carpenter bee. You got a carpenter bee?
We had carpenter bee.
You have a maple tree. Anyone think they have an animal Easter?
Rosy maple moth.
You got the rosy maple moth. Man, you all are good.
New England aster.
New England aster. Who uses a New England aster? A lot of things.
Goldfinch. Cedar waxwing.
I heard someone say it.
Goldfinch.
Goldfinch. Who's got goldfinch? Goldfinch is used and other finches like New England aster with the smaller seeds, especially as they find a seed in the winter time. Who do we have left?
Rattlesnake.
Oh, this one's fun.
Rattlesnake.
This one's a tricky one.
What is it?
Rattlesnake master.
I just actually learned on this one.
Oh, that's Papapima moth.
It's the Pappy Pima moth. Yep, you got it.
Very.
You got the Pappy Pima moth.
It's mean.
The rattlesnake master. That's the comparison.
I've got that one. It's a cool looking.
Button bush. This one's my favorite. Does anyone have a caterpillar they think might use a button bush? It eats their leaves. It's a good guess. Who else has a caterpillar? Which one do you have?
What she just said.
The Cecropia moth? Yep.
It's the guitar, we don't have that.
You don't have it. Who is the Cecropia moth caterpillar?
Yeah.
You got it? Awesome. So that's the one that uses button bush. Who else do we have left? I heard someone say they had the talbot worm. What tree does that go with? That was something like that.
How about a birch? The birches.
You have birches. Who thinks they have an animal that goes with birches? Anyone know? It's a bird. I'll give you that.
What was the plant?
Birch trees.
Cedar waxwing.
Who's got the
I'm
chickadee?
gonna find what this bird goes to.
You got the chickadee. Chickadees use birch trees. All right. Who thinks they have a plant that goes with the cedar waxwing? I'll give you a hint. They eat berries in the winter.
Black cherry.
Yep, you've got it. Man, you all are sitting right next to each other. Yep. And black cherries are actually like the second most useful wildlife plant in the state. Who's left? Yes.
Pawpaw.
Pawpaw. This is a fun one. Now this animal needs pawpaw trees. So it's an insect.
The zebra swallowtail.
So zebra swallowtail, they need pawpaw trees.
The what was zebra?
The zebra swallowtail.
That's a bird.
Butterfly.
Okay.
It's got a tricky one. Anyone else? I think someone has a blue jay. Now this blue jay, that one's tricky. We had 2 oak trees. The blue jay also goes with an oak tree. Did we get to everyone? Is there anyone else? Bobwhite quail. They're on the ground, so what kind of plants do you think they would be?
That's Mediza.
Maybe like a ground cover plant? Anyone have big blue stem?
Yes.
Yep. They need grasses, like bunch grasses like big blue stem, especially when they're babies to hide. I think that was almost everyone. Is anyone missing their counterpart? Wonderful. Okay, so you all found it. Let me look. I just have the answer key up. That's why So as you all can see, you all had different native plants other than the specific species to survive. And so if it goes away, what's going to happen to the animal? Thank you all for playing. All right, so we talked about native plants needing native plants. And we talked about native animals needing native plants. Now what about us? You all are gardeners in here, right? We need native plants too. Why do we need native plants? We've got another coneflower and we've got hydrangea. You all already knew that one though. We need native plants for landscaping. So a lot of us are interested in, so that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit more. We also need native plants for our mental and physical health. Who likes to go hiking? It's more fun to look at a bunch of different species than just bush honeysuckle, right? We need native plants for our food. We need native plants for our medicine, and we also use it for art. Does anyone make any sort of plant art too? Any crafters in here? All right, has anyone heard of Doug Tallamy? This is a name you probably want to know if you're going to think about native plant landscaping. So Doug Tallamy, he's actually an entomologist. He created this, you might have seen some of his books before, like The Nature of Oaks or Bringing Nature Home. He has this initiative called Homegrown National Park. And remember how we looked at the map of Kentucky 200 years ago versus now? We can see the ecosystems have been fragmented a lot. And his initiative is to try and get those puzzle pieces that are our yards, that are our farms, that are our woodlands, back to native plants, to kind of each be a puzzle piece for the larger ecosystem puzzle. So I will send Mary and Savannah these resources, and they can send them out to you. But these are the resources that you're going to want to look for when you're thinking about native plant gardening. So Homegrown National Park is a great website. You can look up your keystone plants, your most important plants you could think of in the area for Kentucky, for this region. You can look up container-friendly plants or not container-friendly plants, just depending on what your goal is. And that can show you how to help the wildlife in your area the most. So Homegrown National Park. And again, I'll send these to Mary and she can send them out to you. Now this is for Lexington, but you can alter it for this area as well. Lexington has what's called Plant by Numbers. The city put this out. It's a really cool website. So I'm going to show just a couple of examples of it, just to kind of show you what it is. But if you are starting from fresh or adding to your garden, it gives you some options for native plants that you can put in your garden, and also where to put them. So it gives you options like full sun, symmetrical, asymmetrical, partial shade, full shade. So this is a really useful one. So here's the example of the full shade. Is anyone part of or interact with the Kentucky Native Plant Society?
Yes, we are.
Good. They got their big event of the year coming up in April, their wildflower weekend. At Hurricanes, I'm going to, I'll see you there.
Oh, good.
But the Kentucky Native Plant Society, I highly recommend even signing up for their newsletter. You get to learn a lot about native plant news and research that's going on in the state. It's made up of, their board is made up of professionals in different organizations who have some sort of native plant knowledge.
And the president is from Paducah.
He is, what's his name?
Jeff Nelson.
Jeff Nelson, he's a great guy. They've got some really good resources on landscaping with native plants. And then, if you have not seen this website before, this is my favorite go-to to actually, where am I going to buy my native plants? This is the website that will show you. So this is the Kentucky Native Plants Project, and you can find one closest to your county. You all are from McCracken County, but you can find one close to you or find where you can buy them online. And this is helpful because you can find native plants that are in your eco region as well. All right. So does anyone have any questions about like resources, or we're looking for something else, hoping to know another resource that I can potentially help with landscaping? And again, I'll send these to Mary. She can send them out to you as well. But those are my favorite sources to find native plants and to also plant your garden as well. So I'm going to do one last thing with you all. We talked about landscaping, how they can add beauty to our gardens. Another thing is how they're actually affecting us personally. personally, our mental and physical health. So I know a lot of you, I think you all have pens, you all have at least the back of a bingo card, or some sort of piece of paper. I want you to, I'm going to show 2 pictures of plants at a time. They're all native plants. I'll say what they are. I want you to come up with the first feeling that it evokes for each of the pictures on the screen. So I'm going to show you a picture. You write down. If you don't have a pen, you can just think about it. What feeling these plants bring to you? And we're going to go through different seasons.
Relaxation.
Relaxation. Go ahead and write down and we can share. We're all done. Thank you. So we've got, we're going to start with winter because we're almost out of it. We've got rhododendron, and we've got coralberry. Y'all are getting your bingos now. Write down what each of these plants, when you're looking at them, makes you feel. And this is not graded. You can write down anything you want.
What's the other one?
Coralberry. It's a bit tricky to see, but it's got little purple berries. So I heard someone say relaxation. What are some other words that what other feelings are these plants evoking for you? Anxious, because it's icy.
Well, just because it's winter, I don't like it. I
Florida?
like spring and summer.
Does someone else have one over here?
Southeastern Kentucky.
Hope.
Hope? What was yours again?
I said Southeast Kentucky.
Yep. How'd you know where I took the pictures? Anyone else want to share their word? Thank you all for sharing.
I say, rest.
Looks like blueberry to me.
Yeah.
Blueberry.
Yeah, thank you all. Okay, we've got 3 more seasons, so I'll have you all do it again. We'll move on to spring. We've got mountain dog hobble. I actually took that picture in North Carolina. I took both of these, so I'm cheating with this one. But you can find them in Eastern Kentucky. We've got mountain dog hobble on the left. I have no idea why it's called that. And mountain laurel on the right. Write down the feelings that these are making you feel, or the thoughts that they're provoking.
Bingo again.
Yeah, bingo again. Mountain dog hobble. Again, I don't know why it's called that. And then mountain laurel.
Laurel.
Yeah. I believe they're in the same family.
Which one's
All right, what kind of feelings are these bringing forth? You can shout them out. Excitement. What'd you say? Euphoric.
Fragrance.
Fragrance. Anything else? Uplifting, renewal. Is anyone liking these better than the last slide?
Yes. Better season.
We'll move on to summertime. We've got New England aster.
Bingo.
And then we, I think you won again. And then we've got greenbrier.
Are we gonna do a cover?
We've got the first one, or I've only got 1 prize, but you can keep going.
Yeah, the cover online is online, right?
All right, what kind of thoughts and feelings are these bringing forth? Spaces. Peace.
Is greenbrier the plant that vines, that has lots of thorns?
Yes.
Yes, I should have said that.
It is.
So the greenbrier, we've got 2 plants in that picture. I tried to trick you. I didn't really. We've got greenbrier is the berries and like almost heart-shaped leaves. Ignore the other plant.
What was the other one?
All right, we've got 1 season left. We've got fall. We've got goldenrod that has gone to seed, and then we've got sumac.
Bingo.
Tree of heaven is an invasive one that looks a lot like.
Which one's the golden?
Yes. Majestic. What other feelings do you have from these?
Is it like poison?
What was it? Okay. Anyone else want to share their fall feelings or their fall native plants?
Deer hunting.
Yeah. Bird watching, deer hunting. These are 2 animals that use sumacs. All right. Thank you all for going through that as well. Thinking about your thoughts and feelings on what is it, Tuesday night? The point that I want to try and make with these is that, what was everyone's favorite season of plants, of these pictures? Spring. I showed you some really beautiful plants for the spring, didn't I? That's when a lot of plants are at their prettiest, is in the spring and the summer. These are all native plants, and they all have their niche. We're not going to cultivate all of them. Is anyone going to cultivate greenbrier? No. Does greenbrier have its place? Cedar waxwings have to eat berries in the winter. Other birds, deer, they need the greenbrier. So the point I'm trying to make with this is that these might evoke positive or negative feelings when we see them. Some of them will go in our garden, and we can do our part to beautify our garden, beautify our life, improve our own life because we get to walk outside and see them. We get to improve the lives of pollinators. We get to improve the lives of wildlife when we plant native plants. Some of them, we're just going to go outside and appreciate when we're in the woods, and we're going to support conservation efforts to keep these plants around. I'm not saying you have to plant greenbrier in your yard. In case you don't, unless you've got woods. So I'll go ahead and end on this quote. It's again by Doug Callamy. He's the one that had the Homegrown National Park. So it's a little small, so I'll read it. Because life is fueled by the energy captured from the sun by plants, it will be the plants that we use in our gardens that determine what nature will be like in 10, 20, and 50 years from now. So each one of you can make a difference. Again, when you're planting these native plants in your yard, I showed you those resources. I'll send them to Mary. You've got the booklet right there with some native plant options as well. Each of you, when you plant, even if it's just a container of bee balm or slender mountain mint or something like that, when you plant these plants, you're determining the future for your own future and also for the generations to come. So thank you all again for letting me come talk today. If you have any questions, please feel free to. Yes, that was the part about.